Okay, so let's start our coaching session for this evening. And ang subject na itatakal natin is on agricultural economics and marketing. So the first part, again, itatakal natin yung mga frequently missed questions during the comprehensive exam. Hindi lahat, okay? Yung mga crucial topics and points lang. And then after that, I will again provide some tips on how to be more effective and efficient sa inyong pagre-review. Particularly, we will be covering the topic about difficulty at kung gaano ba yan kahalaga when it comes to your review journey. Okay, so let's start off with the first part of our online coaching session, which is to discuss the frequently missed questions or topics or concepts that we had in agricultural economics and marketing. So yung unang napansin kong question is na frequently missed out is the topic on equilibrium point. Okay? So basically, when we say equilibrium point, we are talking here about two things that are equal. Okay? So kaya equilibrium. So ano yung dalawang bagay na gusto nating maging equal? Basically, sa konsepto ng microeconomics, we want QD to be equal to QS. So ano yung QD at QS dyan? We're talking here about quantity demanded and quantity supply. Okay? Quantity demand and quantity supply. Tanggalin natin yung ED doon. Quantity demand and quantity supply. So ano ibig sabihin ng quantity demand? Simply speaking, quantity demand, yan yung gustong bilhin ng mga buyers sa market. So ilang amount of carrots, ilang kilos ng cabbage, ilang kaban ng bigas. Okay? So yan yung quantity demand. Ilan, yung amount, yung willingness, and yung ability nila to pay or to purchase these products. So when you say quantity demand, we are talking about the consumer side of the formula. Okay? Kapag sinabi naman natin quantity supply, yan naman yung amount na willing at able i-produce ni producer. So in our case, sa agriculture, ni farmer. So ilang kilo ng cabbage yung kaya niyang i-produce at ibenta, ilang kabang bigas, etc. So ang quantity supply talks here now about the producer side. So demand is consumer side, supply is producer side. Now, in microeconomics, we always want to find yung portion, say, where quantity demand meets quantity supply. Bakit? Para unang-una, para walang sayang, pangalawa, para walang sobra. So, ibig sabihin, kung ano yung benta, yung amount na benta ni producer, ni farmer, yun din yung gustong bilhin ni consumer. So, yung point kung saan quantity supply, quantity demand, is equal to quantity supply, yan yung equilibrium point. Okay? Now, kapag nahanap natin yung equilibrium point na yan, where QD is equal to QS, okay, kapag nahanap natin yung dalawang yan, nagkakaroon tayo ng dalawang numbers, okay? Na importante. Yung una is that when we find QD is equal to QS, nahanap din natin yung equilibrium price, yung presyo kung saan akma yung quantity demand and quantity supply, and nahahanap natin yung quantity, yung equilibrium quantity. So yan yung dalawang bagay or yung dalawang variable na hinahanap natin when we are solving for the equilibrium equation. Okay? So when we find the equilibrium point, we are also finding the equilibrium price and at the same time, the equilibrium quantity. Okay? Now, how do we solve the equilibrium point? Okay? We solve the equilibrium point first by knowing kung ano yung formula ni demand or ni quantity demand, I mean, and yung formula ni quantity supply. So usually, parehas ang format ng demand equation or yung formula ng demand at saka supply equation. Nagkakaiba lang yan dun sa sign. Okay? So for example, kapag demand ang pinag-uusapan, usually ang formula niyan is ganito. A minus B Q. Okay? So yan ay kapag demand ang pinag-uusapan. So kung mapapansin nyo, yung sign na nandito sa gitna is negative. Okay? Or minus sign. Bakit? Kasi according to the theory, demand is inversely related to the price. Okay? So inversely, ibig sabihin magkabaliktad yung relationship ng demand, ng quantity demand, I mean, at price. So kapag tumaas ang price, ang quantity demand ay bababa, and vice versa. Kapag bumaba ang price, ang quantity demand ay tataas. Kapag supply naman, halos parehas lang, pero yung sign sa gitna, instead na minus, instead na negative, magiging positive yan. So bakit siya magiging positive? Kasi according to the law of supply, quantity supply is directly, okay? Directly related to the price. It means, kapag tumaas ang presyo, hahabulin ng mga producer yung mataas na presyo, kaya ang quantity supply ay tataas rin. Kapag naman bumaba ang presyo, ayaw ibenta ng mga producer yan, kaya yung quantity supply ay bababa rin. So tandaan nyo, yan ang parang, let's say, formatting ng demand at saka supply equation natin dyan. So kahit na hindi sabihin sa exam kung yan ay demand or supply equation, dapat alam nyo. Paano nyo malalaman? Tignan nyo yung sign na nasa gitna. Okay? So kapag demand yan, minus sign kasi inversely related ang quantity demand sa price. Kapag naman supply yan, plus sign kasi directly proportional ang quantity supply sa price. So let's have an example. Say you have this quantity demand na 60 minus 2Q and you have a supply equation na 12 plus Q. Now, what we're going to find is the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. Actually, mali ito eh. Para hindi lang tayo malito. Palitan natin yung Q ng P. Okay? Kasi P or yung variable na yan corresponds to the price. Okay? That corresponds to the price. So in order to find these two equations, ang una nating hahanapin, so the first thing that we need to find is equilibrium price. Yan yung pinakauna. So how? We combine both equations. So isusulat mo 60 minus 2p is equal now to 12. Kukunin mo yung supply equation. 12 plus p. Okay? So i-combine mo lang yung dalawang equation natin. So that's the first step. Next, after combining both equations, i-combine nyo yung mga variables na magkakaparehas. So, ano ang kaparehas ni 60 dyan? 60 at saka yung 12. Okay, parehas sila. Yung 2p at saka yung p, parehas na variable yan. So, i-combine lang natin sila. So, we use algebra to do that. So, 60, okay? Yung 12 na yan, lilipat sa kabila. So, mag-iiba yung kanyang sign, minus 12. Is equal now to P. So, yung negative 2P, lilipat sa kabila. So, mag-iiba yung sign niya, magiging positive 2P. Okay? Now, 60 minus 12 is what? 48. Okay? 60 minus 12 is 48. What is P plus 2P? So, kapag letter lang yung nakalagay dyan, automatic 1 lang yan. Ano? So, 1 plus 2 is 3. So, 3P naman na yan. Okay? Now, divide both sides by 3 para mailabas natin yung price kasi yung equilibrium price yung hinahanap natin. Yan. So, para mag-cancel out yan, so you are now left with P is equal to 48 divided by 3, which is 16. Yan, 16. So, nahanap na po natin yung ating equilibrium price. So, yung price point daw, kung saan parehas si demand, si quantity demand at si quantity supply, is at price 16 pesos, sabihin natin. Price 16. Okay? Now, after finding the equilibrium price, we now move on to computing for the equilibrium quantity. So how do we do that? We get the P here and we substitute it to any of the equation. So, pwede mong gamitin yung supply equation or pwede mong gamitin yung demand equation. It doesn't matter. Kasi ang logic niyan, kung ano yung na-compute mo sa demand, parehas lang din. Kasi nga, they are at equilibrium. So, kung demand man yan or supply yan, parehas lang din dapat. So, puntahan natin, i-substitute natin yung price na 16 sa demand equation. So, yung demand equation natin is 60 minus 2. Okay, so yung P natin, nahanap na, 16, ano? 2 times 16. Okay? So, what is 2 times 16? 2 times 16 is 32. Okay? So, 32 yan. So, 60 minus 32, yan po ay 28. So, itong 28 na to, it will now become your equilibrium quantity. Okay? 28 na yung magiging equilibrium quantity. Okay? This is using the demand equation. How about we look at the supply equation? So sa supply equation, tingnan natin na dapat magmamatch yung quantity. Supply equation, okay, sa supply equation, we have 12 plus P. So ano yung P natin? 16. So 12 plus 16, tamang-tama, 28 rin po yan. Okay? So mapapansin natin, parehas na both yung quantity kasi nga, they are at equilibrium. Okay? So that is how we solve a simple mathematical equation on finding the equilibrium price and quantity kapag provide sa inyo yung both demand and supply equation. Okay. So next, try to solve this, guys, and chat your answer before natin sagutin. I'm going to give you 2 minutes na tapusin to. Madali lang, madali lang. So, hanapin lang natin yung equilibrium price and then yung equilibrium quantity. Okay, I think most of you got it correct. So solve natin. So again, first step, combine the formula. So we have 100 minus 2p is equal to 20 plus 2p. So ang inuuna nating isolve dito ay yung equilibrium price, ha? So yan yung pinakauna nating sinusolve dyan, yung equilibrium price. So combine. Next step is to combine similar variables. So we have 100 minus 20. Yan. So si 100 dyan at si 20 dito, i-combine natin. Mag-iiba yung sign ni 20 pag lumipat. Is now equal to, combine natin yung dalawang p. So 2p plus 2p. Okay? So 100 minus 20 is 80. And then 2p plus 2p is 4p. And gusto natin mailabas yung p, yung price. Okay? So i-divide mo yan sa 4. And then i-divide mo rin itong kabila sa 4. So you are now left with p. P is equal now to 80 divided by 4, which is 20. Okay, so correct. So sa mga sumagot ng 20 na price, tama po. Now, ano naman yung equilibrium quantity? Substitute lang natin yung 20 to any of the equation. So, i-substitute natin sa, yan, sa QS. So, ano yung formula ng QS? 20 plus 2. Ang P natin is 20. 2 times 20. Okay? So, 20 plus 2 times 20 is 40. So you are now left with quantity, equilibrium quantity is equal to 60. Okay? So 60 ang ating equilibrium quantity. Ang price is 20, ang equilibrium price ay 20, ang equilibrium quantity ay 60. Okay? So let's move on to our next topic. Itong topic na to na susunod, napansin ko maraming nako-confuse. Okay, ano kayang topic 'yon? It is the topic about price floor and price ceiling. Okay? So, ano ba kasi ang price floor at price ceiling? Now, sabi natin, ang goal sa microeconomics is to find the equilibrium point. Ito, yung nasa gitna. Pero, in reality, minsan, yung equilibrium point natin, specifically yung ating equilibrium price, okay? Yung equilibrium price natin ay hindi fair. Whether you're talking about hindi siya fair sa consumer or hindi siya fair sa producer. Kaya naman, may mga pagkakataon na ang ating government ay naglalagay ng price control mechanism. Okay? Ibig sabihin, sila yung nagsiset ng price. Instead of letting the market set the price, which is the equilibrium price, pumapasok ngayon si government para iset yung presyo. Lalo na kapag napansin nila na unfair ito, whether kay consumer or kay producer. At dalawa, sa common ways, or two ways of price control mechanism that the government use is through price floor at price ceiling. Okay? Now, dito, sa ating graph, ang price control na sinet ni government is this price F. Okay? This one. Ito. Yan yung kanyang price control mechanism. Now, ang question is, yan ho ba ay price floor or yan ay price ceiling? So, ang sagot dyan, kapag ang price mechanism inilagay sa taas ng equilibrium point, so kapag nilagay sa taas ng equilibrium point, automatic ang sagot dapat dyan ay price floor. Okay? Floor po yan, ha? Hindi ceiling. Kasi baka iniisip ng iba, Sir, sa taas kasi, kaya dapat ceiling. No. Ang price floor nilalagay yan sa taas. Bakit? Kasi ang purpose ng price floor ay para ang presyo hindi bababa beyond the price floor. Okay? Kaya ang presyo dapat ay hindi bababa sa floor. Okay? Kaya kapag naglagay ka ng price mechanism line above the equilibrium point, price floor po yun. Okay? And ang price floor, this is meant to protect your producers. Ibig sabihin, yung equilibrium price ay hindi fair sa ating mga farmers. Nagrereklamo yung mga farmers. Yan yung equilibrium price. Pero sabi ng mga farmers, kapag yan ang presyo, wala akong kikitain. So anong gagawin ni government? Tataas niya yung presyo above the equilibrium point. And kapag ginawa niya yon, ang tawag po doon, price floor. Ngayon, kapag naglagay ng price floor si government, mapapansin nyo, yung supply at saka yung demand, hindi na siya equal. Nawawala yung equilibrium point. Okay? Now, kapag nawala yung equilibrium point, yan ay dahil sa pagtaas nga ng presyo. Kung mapapansin nyo, dito sa graph na to, yan yung ating supply, ito yung demand. Kapag tumaas yung presyo, anong nangyayari sa supply? Tumataas rin. So, dumadami po yung ating supply kasi hahabulin ng mga farmers natin yung mataas na presyo. So, they would like to sell more. However, since tumaas ang presyo, yung mga buyers ayaw nang gumastos at bilhin yung produkto na yon. So, the demand, kapag naglagay tayo ng price floor, will decrease. So nagkakaroon na ng disparity, nagkakaroon ng difference si supply at saka si demand. Si supply pagkataas-taas, si demand mababa naman. So nagkakaroon tayo ng problema. Ano yung tawag sa problema na yon? Ang tawag po doon ay surplus. Okay? Ano ibig sabihin ng surplus? Sobrang dami ng supply as compared sa demand. Ibig sabihin, maraming cabbage dyan, wala namang gustong bumili. So nagkakaroon ng surplus. So nagkakaroon ng problem kapag naglagay ka ng price floor or necessarily a problem, nagkakaroon ng disparity. Ano? Now the next one is price ceiling. Ang price ceiling naman po, purahin ko lang to, nilalagay yan sa baba ng equilibrium point. This one. Okay? So yung yellow line na yan is your price ceiling. Ito yung equilibrium point. Ito yung point kung saan sakto yung quantity demand at quantity supply. Pero, si consumer nagrereklamo, Sir, masyadong mataas yung presyo na yan. So, nung gagawin ni government, magsuswoop in siya para maglagay ng price ceiling. At nilalagay niyo yun sa baba ng equilibrium point. And bakit siya naging ceiling? Kasi ang presyo hindi dapat tataas sa ceiling na yan. Okay? So, basically, para siyang takip, no? So, may takip, hindi ang presyo, hindi dapat tataas yan. Kaya yung takip na yon nasa taas, ceiling. Okay? Para makuha nyo yung logic kung bakit yung ceiling, yung price ceiling natin, ay nasa baba ng equilibrium point. Okay? Now, again, kapag si government ay naglagay ng price ceiling, nagkakaroon tayo ng problem. Kapag bumaba ang presyo, anong mangyayari sa ating demand? Ang quantity demand mo tataas naman, no? Maraming mga consumers ang gusto nang bumili. Bakit? Mas mababa na yung presyo. Pero dahil mababa ang presyo, yung mga farmers natin, yung mga producers natin, ayaw nila magbenta. Kasi remember, our producers, our sellers, they are motivated by the price. So pag mababa yung presyo, they don't want to produce that. They don't want to sell that. So napakataas ngayon ng yung demand, hindi bumaba naman yung supply, nagkakaroon tayo ng market phenomenon shortage. Okay? So, ano ibig sabihin ng shortage? Maraming gustong bumili, wala namang, hindi naman ganun karami yung na-produce. Okay? Okay. I just want to confirm guys, naririnig nyo pa rin ba ako? Kasi may nagpapakita sa aking screen na unstable daw ang internet connection ko. Naririnig pa rin ba ako? Or paputol-putol? Okay. Okay na daw. Thank you. Okay. So, given this explanation of price floor and price ceiling, let us answer these questions. So, number 1, what is the usual result of a price floor? Okay. So, ano yung disparity nangyayari kapag may price floor? Anong tawag doon? Correct. Tumpak, no? Tawag doon, surplus. Maraming na-produce, wala namang gustong bumili kapag naglagay ka ng price floor. Next question. So, surplus ang sagot dyan. Next question. This price control line is usually presented below the equilibrium point. So, ano yung nilalagay natin na line sa baba ng equilibrium point to control the price? We call that as price ceiling. Okay? So, tandaan nyo na, ang line na nilalagay sa baba ng equilibrium point is price ceiling. Sa taas naman is price floor. Kumbaga, isipin nyo, magkabaliktad sila. Okay? Price floor sa taas ng equilibrium point, price ceiling sa baba ng equilibrium point. Tandaan nyo yan. It's an important concept that you need to remember and you need to understand. Kasi baka marami ang nalilito. Usually kapag binabanggit ko yan na tanong sa mga na tinuturuan ko, madalas the first time that I ask them kung saan nilalagay ang price ceiling, marami ang nagsasabi agad na sa taas sir, kasi ceiling. Pero mali. Ang ceiling sa baba, ang floor sa taas. Okay. Next question. Tignan naman natin, next topic, tignan naman natin yung konsepto ng profitability in the short run. Okay? So, before discussing this, let me give you some context. Sa microeconomics, meron tayong dalawang klase ng length of operations. Okay? Meron tayong short run and meron tayong long run. Now, actually tatlo kasi meron pang very short run. Pero tanggalin na muna natin yung very short run na yun. So mag-focus lang tayo sa short run at saka sa long run. Kapag sinabi nating long run, unahin muna natin yung long run. Kapag sinabi nating long run, yung business ay nag-ooperate in a longer period of time. Kaya ibig sabihin yan, lahat ng pwede niyang may adjust sa kanyang operations. Whether that be variable inputs or fixed inputs, nag-a-adjust. So, lahat gumagalaw. Okay? Pwede siyang, for example, kapag siya ay nagtitinda, let's say kapag siya ay nagtatanim ng kakao, pwede niyang damihan yung fertilizer na binibili niya. So, pwede niyang baguhin yun. Pwede siyang mag-hire ng mas maraming tao. And at the same time, pwede rin siyang bumili ng mas maluwang na lupa. Kasi yung business na yon is operating in the long run. Ibig sabihin, masyadong matagal yung panahon, kayang-kayang mag-adjust nung negosyo na yon. Okay? So, long run, lahat po ng inputs dyan sa business, okay, lahat ng mga raw materials niya, lahat dyan ay variable. Ano ibig sabihin ng variable? Lahat po ay nagbabago. Okay? In the long run. Now, in contrast with the short run naman. Sa short run, hindi lahat ng inputs dyan or raw materials ay nagbabago. Yes, meron kang inputs na madaling baguhin. Ang tawag mo sa mga inputs na yon ay variable. And then, may mga inputs ka rin na hindi basta-basta nababago. Bakit? Kasi the business is operating in the short run. Kung saan, masyadong maikli yung panahon para mag-expand ng para mag-increase or mag-expand or magbago ng other inputs. Okay? So, balikan natin si Cacao Farmer. Si Cacao Farmer, in the short run, dahil maikli lang yung panahon, pwede niyang baguhin yung fertilizer niya. Okay? Pwede niya ring baguhin yung tao niya. Okay? Pero hindi siya basta-basta makakapag-expand or bumili ng mas maluwang na lupa. Kasi yung expansion ng lupa is a decision that you make in the long run. Okay? Kaya yung lupa na yon, whether that be rented or owned na lupa, fixed po yan. Okay? Now, in the short run, meron tayong mga guiding principles sa economics that allows a farmer or a producer or a business to determine kung magko-continue ba siya na mag-produce or stop na muna ang production kasi hindi siya kumikita. Okay? So, meron tayong principle sa microeconomics kung saan we can know in the short run, in the short run of operation, whether we will still continue producing or we will stop production in the meantime. And ano yung ginagamit natin? Of course, ginagamit natin yung price as a factor that determines that decision in comparison to AVC or ATC or ATC. Okay? Actually, AVC lang talaga yung pinaka-importante sa short run. So ano ibig sabihin ng AVC at saka ATC? Kapag sinabi mong AVC, ang ibig sabihin niyan ay average variable cost. Okay? So average variable cost. Yan yung AVC. So ano ang average variable cost? So ang average variable cost is simply kukunin mo lahat ng variable cost mo. So lahat ng variable cost. So yung totality ng variable cost. Totality ng variable cost. And then i-divide mo siya doon sa quantity of inputs, quantity of outputs na na-produce mo. Okay? Remember ang average variable cost, tinitignan natin yung total variable cost divided by the quantity. Okay? So, hindi fixed cost ang tinitignan natin dyan, but the total variable cost divided by the quantity, nakukuha natin yung average variable cost. Ano naman yung ATC dito? Yung ATC dyan, ang ibig sabihin niyan is average total cost. No? Average total cost. Now, kapag sinabi nating total cost, kasama na lahat-lahat ng gastos yan. So, in the short run, ano yung dalawang klase ng cost? Variable. So, lahat ng mga variable cost mo, lahat ng mga gastos mo na nagbabago. Kasama na lahat ng mga gastos mo na hindi nagbabago or fixed. Kasama dyan sa total cost. So, kukunin mo yung total cost, i-divide mo siya sa quantity, makukuha natin yung average total cost. Now, sa short run, ito yung tandaan nyo short run, hindi importante yung fixed cost. Okay? So, bakit kaya, sir? Bakit hindi importante yung fixed cost? Hindi importante yung fixed cost in the short run kasi ang fixed cost ay considered na siya na sunk cost. Okay? So, what do you mean by sunk cost? Ibig sabihin, yung sunk cost, yan yung cost na quote-unquote, it doesn't matter. Bakit hindi siya nagmamatter? Kasi whether mag-produce ka ng zero output, or whether hindi ka magtanim ng kakao, or magtanim ka ng kakao, babayaran mo pa rin yung fixed cost na yan. So, hindi na siya nagiging parte ng decision making. So, for example, ikaw ay kakao farmer, may lupa ka. Okay? whether hindi ka magtanim ng kakao or magtatanim ka ng kakao, babayaran mo pa rin yung halaga ng lupa na yon. Lalong-lalo na, let's say, kapag yung lupa na yon ay nirerentahan mo. Okay? Kaya in the short run, yung fixed cost na yan, hindi na natin siya kino-consider sa equation. Kaya naman, dahil hindi considered ang fixed cost sa decision, hindi na rin natin tinitignan ang average total cost sa pag-decide whether the farmer will produce or stop producing. So ano lang ang tinitignan natin? Ang tinitignan lang natin na decision marker is price in comparison to average variable cost. Okay, so wag niyo munang tignan tong nandito sa number 2. Okay? I-explain ko yan later on. Wag mo na yan. So the decision is only kapag ang presyo ng kakao, yan, kapag ang presyo ng kakao ay mas mataas doon sa average variable cost. Remember, cost is gastos, no? So kapag ang presyo ay mas mataas kaysa doon sa average variable cost, ang decision dapat ni farmer is to produce. Mag-produce ka. Bakit? Kasi mas mataas yung price ng product kaysa doon sa average na gastos mo. So ibig sabihin, kumikita ka pa rin. Okay? Kumikita ka pa rin dyan. So you just keep producing. You keep producing. No, kailan ka hihinto? Hihinto ka kapag ang presyo ng kakao is equal. Okay? Kapag ang, dito tayo, tignan natin dito. Kapag ang presyo ng kakao ay equal sa average variable cost. Kasi ibig sabihin, kapag ang presyo ng kakao ay equal to the variable cost, tabla ang laban. Yung presyo ay parehas doon sa gastos mo. So, kapag nag-produce ka pa, beyond this point, magkakaroon ka na ng loss. Okay? And paano natin nalalaman na loss na yon? Kapag ang price, this one, is less than the average variable cost. Okay? So, yun yung mga decision markers natin in the short run. Kapag price is greater than AVC, you keep producing. Kailan ka hihinto? Hihinto ka when price is equal to average variable cost. Now, itong point na to, this one, ang tawag mo dyan, shutdown point. Okay? Kapag equal na yan, dapat stop na muna. You temporarily stop. Why? Kasi if you continue producing, price now will be less than average variable cost and magi-incur ka na ngayon ng loss instead of profit. Okay? Kasi ang gusto natin dyan, as a farmer, as a producer, price is higher than our gastos. Kasi when price is higher than our gastos, kumikita ka. Pero kapag price is already less than the gastos, price ng pagbili ng produkto mo is less than the gastos, then hindi ka na kumikita, you are now incurring a loss. Ayaw mo yung ayaw mo yung experience na yon. Okay? Kaya titigil ka when price is equal to AVC. Kaya this point is also called the shutdown point. Okay? Shutdown point. Yan. So, para lang hindi kayo ma-confuse, kasi parang medyo confusing yung nilagay ko dito. Okay? So, when price is greater than average variable cost, ang decision, keep producing. Keep producing. Kasi kumikita ka as a producer, as a farmer. When price is equal to average variable cost, okay, stop. stop producing. Bakit? Kasi yan yung shutdown point natin. Shutdown. Ibig sabihin, temporarily, huwag ka nang mag-produce pa ng mas marami. Kasi kapag nag-produce ka pa beyond that point, price now will be less than AVC. And kapag nangyari yan, when price is less than AVC, nagkakaroon ka na ngayon ng loss. Okay? So I hope that clear things up. Okay? All right. So let's answer this question. The minimum price level a competitive firm must cover to continue producing in the short run. Okay, tawag doon. The minimum price level a competitive firm must cover. So, ano dapat yung i-cover nung price para mag-continue lang siya? Okay, ano dapat yung binabayaran nung price, basically, para si firm ay mag-continue lang to produce? Okay? So, correct, no? Ang tamang sagot dyan is average variable cost. So, yung point ng average variable cost, yan yung, isipin nyo na lang, yan yung standard. Okay? Versus the price, ha? Yan yung standard na dapat hindi bababa dyan si price. So long as mas mataas si price dun sa ating average variable cost, mag-produce lang yan ng mag-produce. Until it hits yung equilibrium, stop production. Okay? So, average variable cost ang tamang sagot dyan. Next. A decision to shut down temporarily in the short run is when? Nabanggit ko yan. Ano kaya yung dapat na senaryo para mag-shutdown temporarily? Okay, tama, no? When price is equal to ABC. So, tanggalin nyo yan. Mali yan, ha? Mali to. Oops. So, mali yan. Dapat ang sagot dyan is shutdown if price is equal to ABC. Kasi kapag price is less than ABC, ano nang meron doon? Diba? Loss ka na. So, we don't want that to happen. So, you shut down when price is equal to average variable cost. Next question. If price is less than average total cost, so nabanggit na si total cost dyan, average total cost, the firm is profitable, true or false? Kapag mas mababa ang presyo kaysa doon sa gastos, profitable daw si firm, that is, okay, correct, no? That is false. Mali yan. Kasi kumikita lang si firm if the price is greater than your average total cost or the price is greater than your average variable cost. Okay? So price is price less than ATC, nag-i-incur actually si firm ng loss dyan. Okay. Next topic, we now move forward to price elasticity. Not necessarily, ma'am. Okay, so may question si Ma'am Ami, sabi niya, if price is equal to AVC, ibig bang daw sabihin nun ay break even? Hindi po, no? Kasi ang konsepto po ng break even, lalagay ko lang dito. Ang konsepto po kasi ng break even is on the total cost. Okay? Being equal to your total revenue. Okay? Yan yung ating total revenue, yan yung kabuuan ng sales. Total cost, yan yung kabuuan ng gastos. Itong senaryo na to, yan yung tinatawag nating break even. Okay? Break even. Break even po yan. So, sa break even, kino-compare natin yung total cost at saka yung total sales. Now, yung concept natin kanina, ang kino-compare natin is the price at yung average variable cost. Remember, average variable cost lang po ito. Okay? And kino-compare natin siya sa price, hindi sa kabuuang sales. So mas tama po yung term na when price is equal to AVC, instead of saying break even, mas tama po yung term na shutdown point. Okay? Shutdown point. Ibig sabihin, huwag ka lang mag-produce beyond that. Kasi if you produce beyond that, you might be incurring a loss. Okay? So I hope that answers your question, and I hope that clarifies the concept of break-even and shutdown point. So, yeah. So next question po tayo. Let's talk about the price elasticity of demand. So another topic na mataas rin ang puntos sa ating table of specifications. Now mag-focus lang muna tayo sa price elasticity of demand. Demand ang pinag-uusapan natin diyan. So, kapag sinabi nating price elasticity, or simulan lang muna natin dito sa konsepto ng elasticity, ano ibig sabihin niyan? Elasticity is something to do with the responsiveness. Okay? Or gaano ba ka-sensitive si buyer. So, gaano ka-sensitive si buyer kapag nagbabago ang presyo. Okay? So, kapag tumaas ang presyo by a certain, let's say, 1%, paano nagbabago yung ating quantity demanded? Yun yung tinitignan natin sa price elasticity of demand. Okay? Kaya naman, ang formula ng price elasticity of demand is tinitignan natin yung percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. Okay? So, kino-compare natin yung pagbabago sa quantity demanded at yung pagbabago sa presyo. Kaya yung general formula niya is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. Now, bakit mahalaga ang elasticity, ang price elasticity of demand? Mahalaga yan kasi ang mga buyers natin, iba-iba yung responsiveness or sensitivity nila sa presyo, depende kung anong product ang pinag-uusapan. Like for example, dragon fruit. Okay? Kapag tumaas ang presyo ng dragon fruit, ang dragon fruit naman ay hindi ganon kahalaga sa pang-araw-araw na buhay, no? Kapag tumaas ang presyo ng dragon fruit, more or less, no, chances are the buyers will not buy dragon fruit. Kasi hindi mahalaga ang dragon fruit. Aanhin ko yan kapag tumaas ang presyo. Pero kapag bumaba ang presyo ng dragon fruit, nagiging appealing siya. No? Gusto natin bumili ng mas marami. So, kung mapapansin nyo, very sensitive si buyer dun sa pagtaas at pagbaba ng presyo sa dragon fruit. Pero ang dragon fruit, dahil non-essential siya and is considered a luxurious item, very sensitive si buyer. Tinitignan niya talaga yung presyo niyan before siya bumili. Now, compare dragon fruit to rice. No? Ang rice is a staple commodity here in the Philippines. So kapag tumaas ang presyo ng rice, si buyer, taga-Pilipinas, si Pilipino, bibili pa rin yan ng presyo. Bibili pa rin yan ng rice. No? So ibig sabihin, hindi siya ganun ka-sensitive. Bakit hindi siya ganun ka-sensitive? Kasi rice is an essential commodity on the table of Filipino people. No, kapag bumaba ang presyo ng rice, hindi rin naman siya mag-iimbak kasi usually, ang rice sa isang tahanan, naka-budget lang yan. Like for example, kapag ang nauubos ng pamilya mo is 25 kilos of rice per month, usually 25 kilos per month lang ang binibili dyan. So whether magbago yung price, hindi ganon gumagalaw yung quantity. So yun ang tinitignan natin sa price elasticity of demand. So we are now looking at how sensitive the buyers are when price is changing. And based on that, we can actually classify kung yung buyer ba na ito ay elastic, inelastic, or unitary, perfectly inelastic, perfectly elastic. So yan yung mga different types of elasticity. Let's see if we can cover that later, no? Pero ang gusto ko lang i-explain sa slide na to is yung concept, yung kahalagahan ng elasticity. Kasi meron tayong lecture sa ating Google Classroom that covers a lot deeper on different concepts of elasticity. Kasama na dyan yung 5 types of elasticity. And then, meron din doon sa ating Google Classroom a topic on the different types of elasticity. Kasi bukod pala sa price elasticity, meron din tayong tinatawag na cross-price elasticity at meron din tayong tinatawag na income elasticity. Now, balikan nyo na lang po yun sa lesson nyo. Kung hindi nyo pa na, kung na-cover nyo na, no, balikan nyo. Kung hindi pa, magandang puntahan yon in order to have a deeper understanding of what elasticity is. But for this, we will be focusing on the price elasticity of demand. Okay? So, let's have an exercise now. If a 10% increase in the price of tomatoes leads to a 20% decrease in quantity demand, the price elasticity of demand in absolute value is what? So, balikan natin yung formula. So, ano yung formula? Para lang mas mabilis, ano? Percent change. Yung triangle pala na yan means change. So, percent change in quantity demanded divided by percent change in the price. So, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. Sulat natin dito. Percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. So, ano kaya ang sagot dito? So, tignan natin, ano ba yung mga nagbago daw? Una, nagkaroon ng 10% increase in the price of tomatoes. So, saan mo ilalagay na equation yan? Dito sa percentage change in the price. So, since naka-percentage na yung binigay sa atin, isusulat mo lang yan as is. So, 10 na yan, no? Kasi basically, yung 10% na yan already talks about the percentage change in the price. So, 10 na yan. Sa taas, ano naman daw yung nagbago nung tumaas ng 10% yung presyo ng kamatis? Ang naging resulta daw ay 20% decrease in quantity demanded. So, paano may susulat yung 20% decrease? So, dahil nag-decrease yan, that would now be negative 20. Again, 20% na yan, ano? So, it is already talking about the percentage change in quantity. So, simply, paano mo siya isosolve? Ito, negative 20 divided by 10. Ang sagot dyan ay negative 2. Okay? Now, however, guys, pagdating sa computation ng elasticity, lagi niyong tandaan na hindi po natin pinapakialaman yung or wala tayong pake dito sa sign na nandito. Okay? Ang tinitignan lang natin sa elasticity is the absolute value. So, ang tamang sagot dito would still be 2. Okay? Kasi ano ba yung pinapakita ng sign na yan? Pinapakita ng sign na yan is direction. Okay? Kapag nakita nyo na negative yung elasticity, ibig sabihin, bumaba yung quantity demand. Okay? Or, basically, kapag ganito na lang. Kapag negative yung sign na nakuha natin dyan, usually, yan ay price elasticity of demand. Okay? So, demand yan. Pinag-uusapan natin. Price elasticity of demand. Kapag naman positive yung value na yan, yung value na to, price elasticity of supply naman ang tinitignan natin dyan. Okay? So, yung sign na yan only looks at whether we are seeing a price elasticity of demand or price elasticity of supply. So, hindi yan nagmamatter doon sa value ng ating elasticity coefficient na tinatawag. So, kapag sinabi nating elasticity coefficient, yan yung sagot dun sa ating elasticity computation. So, for this question, a 10% increase in the price of tomatoes will lead to a 20% decrease in quantity demanded. The price elasticity of demand is 2. Okay? 2 ang magiging sagot dyan. O, added question. Added question. O, kung 2 yung price elasticity coefficient na na-compute natin, anong type of elasticity kaya yan? Sige, chat niyo yung sagot niyo. So, ang sagot nyo ay elastic. Tama, no? Elastic. So, i-cover ko yung tatlong major, ha? Huwag na muna yung dalawang, ano ba tawag doon? Wild card. Kapag ang sagot na nakuha natin, elasticity coefficient na nakuha natin is greater than 1. Okay? So, kapag greater than 1, mas mataas sa 1, okay. So, if it's greater than 1, elastic yan. Elastic. Okay? Kapag less than 1, kumari 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, inelastic naman yan. Kapag naman po equals to 1, ang tawag mo naman doon ay unitary. Kaya ko rin nabanggit yung sign dito kanina kasi kunwari, ang sagot na nakuha nyo ay negative 2. Baka ang isipin nyo ay, sir, negative 2 is less than 1. Tama naman, no? Kaya inelastic yan. Mali po, no? Kasi sabi ko nga, ang tinitignan lang natin dating sa elasticity is the absolute value. Okay? Huwag natin pakialaman yung sign, yung absolute tayo, doon tayo magbabase in order to know kung yung elasticity ba ay elastic, inelastic, or unitary. Okay. Next topic. Ito, isa rin to, no? Na madalas nalilito ang mga reviewees natin. Ano yung pagkakaiba ng change in quantity supply at change in supply? Okay? Now, when you say supply, actually, pati demand dyan eh. Ano yung pagkakaiba ng change in quantity demand at change in demand? Pero mag-focus na muna tayo sa supply. Pero same principle, no? Same concept applies with the demand side. So ano yung pagkakaiba kapag sinabi nating nagkaroon ng change in quantity at change in supply? Ito lang yon. Okay? When we say that there is a change in quantity supply, okay? Kapag graph lang yung tinitignan natin, kung mapapansin nyo, ang change in quantity supply, gumagalaw lang siya within the same supply curve. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, at any point of the supply curve, change in quantity supply po yan. Hindi ka nagkakaroon ng panibagong supply curve, hindi siya nag-shift to the left or to the right, nananatili siya within one supply curve. Change in quantity supply po yan. And ano lamang yung reason kung bakit nagkakaroon tayo ng change in quantity supply? Ang reason lang po ay price. Okay? So, price lamang po ang dahilan kung bakit nagkakaroon tayo ng change in quantity supply. Ibig sabihin, kapag tumaas ang price, ang quantity supply ay tataas. Kapag bumaba ang price, okay? Kapag tumaas ang price, ang quantity supply ay tataas. Kapag bumaba ang price, ang quantity supply ay bababa. pero hindi siya gumagawa ng panibagong supply curve or supply line. Okay? In contrast, kapag sinabi naman po nating change in supply, nakikita natin na nagkakaroon ng panibagong supply curve. Nag-shift na siya to the left or to the right. Okay? So gumagalaw na yung buong supply curve natin. Kapag nag-shift yung supply curve mo to the right, ibig sabihin nagkaroon ka ng increase in supply. Okay, increase in supply. Kapag naman nag-shift siya to the left, nagkakaroon ka ng decrease in supply. Okay? So another key term na kailangan yung matandaan. Kapag change in quantity supply, tandaan nyo yung word na movement. Okay? Kasi sa change in quantity supply, there is only a movement along one supply curve. Gumagalaw lang siya within one supply curve. So, movement along one supply curve. Kapag naman change in supply, ang tandaan nyo na word dyan ay shift. Okay? There is now a shift in the entire supply curve, whether that be to the left or to the right. Okay? And kung ang change in quantity supply, ang nagkukos niyan ay price only, ano naman ang nagkukos ng change in supply? So, ang nagkukos po ng change in supply, yung mga tinatawag nating non-price factors. Okay? So, non-price factors. Ano-ano yung mga yon? Technology. Kumari, si farmer ay bumili ng tractor, mas maraming tractor. Technology yon, increase in technology, tataas ang supply. Price ng raw materials, non-price din yan. Okay? Kasi ang tinitignan natin na presyo dyan is yung presyo ng mismong commodity. Pero kapag ang tinignan na natin is yung presyo ng raw materials or inputs, nagiging non-price determinant na yan. Change in supply yan. For example, tumaas ang presyo ng langis. Kapag tumaas ang presyo ng langis, tataas ang presyo ng raw materials, so si farmer, ibababa niya yung kanyang production. Okay? So, malinaw ang difference ng dalawa. Kapag change in quantity supply, movement along one supply curve, ang tanging factor lang dyan is the own price of that product. Kapag change in supply naman, there is a shift in the entire supply curve, whether to the right or to the left. And ang factors naman dyan ay mga non-price determinants, katulad ng technology, price ng raw materials, etc. Klaro? Okay. So kung klaro, sagutin natin itong tanong na to. So a change caused by factors such as technology, input prices, taxes, subsidies, or number of sellers. Ano kaya yan? Change in supply or change in quantity supply? Yan po ay change in, okay, so yan ay change in supply. Tama. Change in supply po yan. O, next question. Paano kapag yung change is caused only by the product's own price? By change in supply or change in quantity supply? Para malinaw. Okay, correct, no? Kapag yung mismong price lang ang gumalaw, yung cost lang ng change is the product's own price, change in quantity supply lang po yan. Correct. How about this? What will happen to the amount of corn produced if the price of fertilizer decreases? So unang tanong, yan ba ay change in supply or change in quantity supply? Again ang tinitignan natin, ang gumalaw daw dyan is the price of fertilizer, not the price of corn, but the price of fertilizer. Okay? Remember, ang hinahanap natin is anong mangyayari sa supply ng corn kapag nagbago yung presyo ng fertilizer. So, yung presyo ng fertilizer is a price or non-price determinant. It is a Non-price determinant po yan. Kasi ang price of fertilizer is the price of inputs or price of raw materials. So ang tamang sagot dito, okay, kapag nagbago ang price ng fertilizer, if the price of fertilizer decreases, there will be a change in supply. Okay? Not change in quantity supply, but change in supply. Kasi ang determining factor dyan is the price of fertilizer. Not the price of corn, but the price of fertilizer. Baka malito kayo doon. Kaya tignan nyo kung ano ba yung presyo na binabanggit dun sa question. Yun ba ay presyo ng product na pinoproduce or yan ay presyo ng raw materials? Kung ang presyo ng product yung determining factor, change in quantity supply. Pero kapag ang presyo ng raw materials yung factor, yan po ay change in supply. O follow-up question. Kapag tumaas yung presyo ng fertilizer, kapag bumaba yung presyo ng fertilizer, anong mangyari sa supply? Tataas or bababa? Kapag bumaba ang presyo ng fertilizer, anong mangyari sa supply ng corn? Increase or decrease? Lang sagot. Increase or decrease? It will increase or decrease. So, mababa ang presyo ng fertilizer, ibig sabihin, yung mga farmer, maeengganyo na mag-produce, no? Kasi mababa yung presyo ng abono. So, they will buy more abono. Ibig sabihin, they will buy more seeds. They will plant more. So, they will increase the supply, not decrease it. Okay? They will increase the supply. Kasi tandaan nyo, ang raw materials, yung price of raw materials, inverse ang relationship niya sa supply. Kapag mas mahal yung presyo ng inputs, madi-discourage si farmer na mag-produce. Pero kapag mas mura yung farm inputs, mas gaganahan siya na bumili ng inputs at magtanim at magparami ng kanyang production. Okay? Oh, how about this? The market price of corn rises. So, tumaas daw ang presyo ng corn. Ngayon, ang nangyari, si farmers nag-offer ng mas maraming corn for sale. Is that a change in supply or is that a change in quantity supply? Change in quantity supply. Yan, ano? Kasi ang tinitingnan natin dyan, yung determining factor dyan is the price of the corn itself. Okay? Yung price ng commodity. Okay? Klaro? Okay, so good, no? Change in quantity supply. So, tandaan nyo medyo i-familiarize nyo yung sarili nyo sa difference ng change in supply and change in quantity supply. Okay, so for our next topic, kasi napansin kong marami yung nalilito dito, is the different types of market structure. Okay? Now, ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng market structure? Ang market structure, ang tinitignan natin dyan is yung characteristic ng market. Okay? Characteristic ng market. So, ano-ano mga characteristics ang tinitignan natin? Una, tinitignan natin, ano ba yung number? Gaano ba karami yung buyers? And yung sellers. So, yan, yung una nating tinitignan. Next, tinitignan din natin, ano ba yung klase ng product? Yung binibenta nila. So, yung product ba ay homogeneous? Ibig sabihin, pare-parehas? Okay? Walang unique advantage? Or heterogeneous? Ibig sabihin, magkakaiba? Or there's something unique from one product going to another? So, tinitignan natin yan as part of the characteristic. And then, tinitignan rin natin dyan yung barriers to entry. Ano naman yung barriers to entry? Madali bang pumasok sa ganyang klaseng market, sa ganyang klaseng negosyo? Or medyo mahirap kasi maraming permit, maraming kailangang asikasuhin na bureaucracy. Okay, so yan yung mga main characteristics na tinitignan natin sa market structure. And based upon these characteristics, we can now classify into 5. Ito yung 5 most common market structure. Kung ang market ba ay perfectly competitive or perfect competition, imperfectly competitive or monopolistic competition, oligopoly, monopoly, at monopsony. Okay? Kapag sinabi nating perfect competition, what do we mean by that? So in terms of characteristics, sa perfect competition, ang buyers mo at saka yung sellers mo, marami, parehas. They are many. Many buyers, many sellers. So yan yung unang characteristic ng perfect competition. In terms of product, ang mga produkto na binibenta under a perfectly competitive market, homogeneous or pare-parehas. Ibig sabihin, walang advantage whether bumili ka kay store 1 or kay store 2. Parehas lang ng quality yung mga yan. Okay? Pangatlo, in terms of barriers to entry, madali lang pumasok sa ganyang klaseng business or sa ganyang klaseng market. So, wala masyadong bureaucracy involved, wala masyadong permits involved, business permit of course. Pero kumbaga, kung magbebenta ka ng mga produkto under a perfectly competitive market, madali lang. Yan. So, perfectly competitive yung market na yan. So, example ng isang perfectly competitive market is our common agricultural product katulad ng rice. Okay? Now, ang rice, marami kang buyer, marami kang sellers and producers. Yung produkto nila, pare-parehas lang na rice yan. Okay? Walang added advantage, say. And in terms of barriers to entry, wala masyado. Walang may control kung sino lang dapat ang magpuproduce ng rice. So, perfect competition yan. Ang monopolistic competition naman, parang kapatid siya ni perfect competition. Una, marami kang buyers, marami kang sellers, madali lang rin pumasok sa ganyang klaseng market. Ang pinagkaiba lang, under monopolistic competition, is the type of product. Kasi under a monopolistic competition product, a market structure, I mean, ang product po ay heterogeneous. Magkakaiba. Or there's something unique from one product to another. Okay? So ano example ng isang monopolistic competition? Diyan napapasok yung mga organic na agricultural products natin. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, yung mga organic products natin, yung presyo niya ay hindi tugma dan sa presyohan sa merkado, sa palengke. No? Pwede silang mag-price higher. Bakit? Because their product is somehow unique. Okay? Organic siya. Ibig sabihin, wala masyadong chemical, nabibenta nila yan sa mas mataas na presyo. Okay? So yan ang monopolistic competition. Oligopoly, ano naman yan? So ang oligopoly, in terms of buyers and sellers, okay, or number of buyers muna, marami ang number of buyers natin, maraming consumer. Pero in terms of sellers, there are only few firms or few companies that are selling that product. Kaunti lang sila or bilang lamang. Okay? So example ng oligopoly would be your soft drinks. Okay? Kapag soft drinks ang pinag-uusapan, bilang lang yan. We have Pepsi, say, and we have Coca-Cola. That's one, oligopoly. Ano pa? Yung sa langis. Okay? Kontrolado lang yan ng a few firms. Okay? So you have many sellers, you have many buyers and you have few sellers, oligopoly yan. Now in terms of product, pwedeng ang oligopoly mo is ano natawag nun? Perfect oligopoly kapag homogeneous yung produkto, kapag pare-parehas. And differentiated oligopoly naman kapag magkakaiba yung products or kapag heterogeneous. In terms of barriers to entry under oligopoly, medyo mahirap pumasok sa ganyang klaseng negosyo. Either capital intensive siya, kailangan mo ng connections, kailangan mo ng maraming permits before you can enter such kind of market. Okay? Si monopoly, parang kapatid lang din yan ni oligopoly. Okay? Halos parehas sila ng feature. Ang nagkakaiba lang sa number of sellers. Kung si oligopoly, maraming sellers, so you have many sellers under few sellers under oligopoly. Sa monopoly naman, you only have one seller. Iisa lang ang nagbebenta. So classic examples dyan would be yung mga electric cooperative natin sa ating mga lugar-lugar. Okay? So wait lang guys ha. Just 1 to 2 minutes na bathroom break. Okay? Wait lang. Okay. So yun yung ating monopoly. You have one seller, many buyers. Okay? One seller, many buyers. Ano naman po itong monopsony? Ang monopsony naman po, okay? Ang monopsony naman ay parang, say, kabaliktaran ni monopoly. Okay? Paano siya naging kabaliktaran ni monopoly? Kasi sa monopsony, instead of having one seller, sa monopsony po, meron ka lang isang buyer at maraming seller. Okay? Yun yung pagkakaiba nila. No? Sa monopoly, isang seller, maraming buyer. Sa monopsony, isang buyer at maraming seller. So for example, sa contract growing business, kapag si Pilmico, kinontrata niya lang yung maraming farmers, maraming poultry farmers, na sila lang yung bibili ng itlog ng mga farmers na yon, monopsony yung market yon. Si Pilmico lang yung nag-iisang buyer. Okay? And itong si Pilmico na to, siya lang yung may karapatang bumili ng mga produkto ng mga poultry farmers sa lugar na yun. Okay? So yan yung pagkakaiba ng ating 5 market structures. O question. Market structure of a common agricultural product like rice. So ano kaya yung market structure ng rice? Ang sagot? Okay, tama no? Ang sagot po dyan, perfectly competitive market. So kapag tinanong kayo sa exam kung ano yung market structure ng common agricultural market natin, basically ang sagot dyan, perfect competition. Okay? Or yung other term na ginagamit ng iba, purely competitive market. So purely competitive market or perfect competition, parehas lang po ibig sabihin niya. Okay? Next, this is a market structure where only a few large firms dominate the market. Few large firms dominate the market. Yan, tama no? Oligopoly naman po yan. If you have few sellers and many buyers. Okay? Next question. When SM becomes the sole buyer of onions among onion farmers in Bulacan, the market structure is? monopsony yan, no? Kasi meron ka lang nag-iisang buyer, si SM, na siya yung may sole right to buy onions dun sa mga farmers na nasa Bulacan. So, monopsony yan. Okay? Next topic is yung mga different physical functions of agricultural marketing. Okay? Now, sa agricultural marketing, meron tayong iba't ibang mga functions. Meron tayong exchange function, meron tayong facilitating function, pero yung pinaka-tangible na siguro na functions ng agricultural marketing is yung tinatawag nating physical functions. Okay? Now, why do we call it physical function? We call it physical function kasi it is involved in the physical handling of the product. Kaya siya tinawag na physical function. And itong physical functions na to, nahahati siya into 5 categories. So una dyan, of course, yung tinatawag nating transportation function. Okay? Now, ang transportation, basically, when you move one product nearer to the market. So, kapag minumove yung produkto from the farmer's site, going to the market, transportation po ang tawag doon. Okay? Now, ang transportation, nagke-create yan ng tinatawag natin na place utility. Okay? So, transportation function creates place utility. Bakit place utility? Kasi pinapalapit natin yung produkto doon sa mga consumer na para mas maging accessible siya sa mga consumer na nasa lugar na yon. Okay? Next, storage function. So, ang storage function na yaman, yan yung, with the word itself, we store agricultural commodities so that in the future, kapag ang demand po ay mataas, may maibibenta pa rin. Okay? So, storage function naman po yon. So, yung mga different warehouses, kung saan nakakapag-store tayo ng iba't ibang agricultural commodities, they are in charge of the storage function of agricultural marketing. So, kung ang transportation creates place utility, ang storage naman po creates time utility. Okay? Nagkikreate siya ng time utility. Bakit time utility? Kasi, kunwari, maraming na-produce na rice ngayon, pero hindi pa kailangan. So, instead na mabulok, ilalagay mo na yan sa warehouse para in the future, kung tumaas ang demand, you can provide it instantly. Okay? Kaya, storage creates time utility. How about storage? How about processing? Okay? Ang processing naman is when you transform the product from the raw product itself and making it into a new product na kinakailangan ni consumer. So, for example, yung Chinese cabbage, ginawa mong kimchi. Okay? So, nagke-create yan ng, may processing involved there. So, it now creates what we call as form utility. So, mahalaga kasi yung form utility. Why? Kasi may mga consumer, hindi ayaw naman nilang kainin yung Chinese cabbage, pero gusto nilang kainin yung kimchi. So, kapag ginawa mo siyang kimchi, mas mabibili siya. Ganon din kapag yung strawberry jam, right? Yung strawberry jam, yung strawberry as is, hindi mo naman pwedeng gawin yung palaman sa tinapay. Pero kapag ginawa mong strawberry jam, magiging palaman na siya sa tinapay. Next function is packaging. So, ang packaging naman is a function meant to protect the product. Okay? So, nagkikreate siya ng protection dun sa produkto. And at the same time, packaging also is involved in marketing. Kasi some packaging, naglalagay sila ng label dun sa produkto na yon and nagre-relay sila ngayon ng information dun sa mga consumers. So, it can be a form of promotion, yung packaging natin, when given that context. And finally, we have grading and standardization. So, ang grading and standardization, ang pinaka-function yan is gawing simple
yung buying and selling process. So, for example, bakit ba natin ginagraduhan yung mga meat cuts? Okay? Kasi hindi lahat ng meat dapat pare-parehas yung presyo. Kasi may mga meat na premium ang quality, so dapat mas mataas ang price ng meat na yon. Then may mga meat naman na lower ang quality, so we grade them. Standardization, ang ibig lang sabihin niyan, dapat pare-parehas. Para kapag si consumer ay bumili, let's say, ng itlog, at ang itlog na kailangan niyang bilhin ay small lang, yung naka-tray na itlog doon, lahat doon, puro small. Okay? Hindi halo-halo. So napapabilis, napapasimple yung buying process. Si consumer, hindi na niya kailangang siya yung magsusort or siya yung mag-i-standardize ng produkto. Kung ano yung kailangan niya na characteristic ng product, ng agricultural product, yun yung readily available sa market. Okay? So yan yung 5 physical functions sa agricultural marketing. A question, changing the form of an agricultural product to make it more useful or valuable. Anong physical function yan? Changing the form. Okay, very good, no? So processing po yan. If you create a new product as a by using the raw agricultural product, you are processing it, you are creating form utility. So processing po yan. Next, this function creates time utility daw. So this function creates time utility. Okay, correct, no? Storage po yung nagke-create ng time utility. Okay? Storage. Next one. Before distribution, harvested coffee beans are classified according to size, moisture content, and defect level using uniform quality specifications. Yan ay grading and standardization. Correct. Grading and standardization. Okay, so I think this would be our last topic, no? Opportunity cost. Kasi napansin ko maraming nagkamali dito, no? Now, ano ba ang opportunity cost sa economics? So simply speaking, nabuo ang pag-aaral ng economics kasi you cannot have it all. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo pwedeng makuha si A without sacrificing B, or hindi mo pwedeng makuha si B without sacrificing A. And bakit may ganun tayong dilema? May ganun tayong dilema kasi unang-una, yung kagustuhan daw ng tao, yung needs and wants ng tao, infinite, walang katapusan. Pero yung resources na mayroon siya, limitado lamang. So kailangan si tao mag-prioritize. Ano ba yung bibilhin niya? Ano bang negosyo yung kanyang itatayo? Anong trabaho yung a-applyan niya? So every time na namimili siya, if-ino-forgo na niya yung value nung hindi niya pinili. Okay? So every time na namimili siya, if-ino-forgo niya yung value nang hindi niya pinili. So kunwari, may choice ng, let's say saging at saka apple. Now limited lang yung pera niya. Ano kaya yung kanyang bibilhin? Apple ba or banana? So kapag binili niya yung banana, yung value ng apple, wala na yon. Tapos na. Okay? So yun yung kahalagahan ng opportunity cost. It shows us the basic principle of economics that resources are scarce and the wants and needs of the people are unlimited. So because of that, nagkakaroon tayo ng dilemma. Now, with this question, sabi dito, a farmer has 2 cropping options. Ano yung option A? Yung option A daw, nagpo-provide ng 55,000 pesos. Ano naman yung option B? It gives a net income of 42,000 pesos. If the farmer chooses option A, kapag pinili niya yung 55,000 pesos, ano yung opportunity cost ng choice na yon? So ano kaya ang sagot dyan? Tingin nyo, ano sagot dyan? Okay, 42,000? Yes, ano, tama, no? Ang sagot po dyan ay 42,000 pare. So, 42,000. Now, a lot of you guys think, 55,000 minus 42 dapat, no? 55 minus 42. So, ang opportunity cost dapat dyan ay, ilan ba? 13,000. So, mali po, no? Well, 13,000 yung difference ng dalawang options. Pero, sa konsepto ng opportunity cost, ano yung na-forgo na value? Yung na-forgo na value sa kabuuan is yung 42,000 pa rin. Kasi kapag pinili niya yung option A na 55,000, ibig sabihin, hindi niya makukuha yung option 2 na yung option B na may halagang net income of 42,000. Okay? Kaya yung 42,000 na yan yung opportunity cost. Okay? So, klaro dapat yun ha. So, huwag niyong gagamitin ito. Itong equation na yan, mali yan. Kasi kapag opportunity cost ang pinag-uusapan, ang tinitignan lang natin dyan is, ano ba yung kabuuan na walang value? Kasi kapag pinili niya si A, hindi niya pwedeng piliin si B. Ganun lang po yun. Okay? So, yun yung last topic natin sa ating agricultural economics and marketing na exam. Ngayon, ang next sa pag-uusapan natin is yung part 2 ng program, part 2 ng program, part 2 ng lecture, ng live session natin, which is giving you some tips that could help you in your review. Okay? And ang title ng ating slide for this is Desirable Difficulties. Okay? No, pagdating sa review, marami sa mga estudyante ang namomotivate mag-review kapag nakukuha lagi yung mga sagot. Kapag madaling sagutan, yung mga sagot. Kapag very simple yung mga concepts. Lalo na sa economics. Okay? Kasi sa economics, ang pinagkaiba ng economics sa ibang mga exam, yung ibang mga exam, very technical and very objective. Okay? Kung ano yung sagot, yun yung sagot basically. Pero sa economics, kailangan mong i-analyze. Kailangan mong paghirapan minsan na isipin. So may mga iba't ibang mga konteksto, may iba't ibang mga examples, may mga iba't ibang situations na ibibigay sa exam na kailangan mong pag-isipan. That makes it harder to resolve that particular question. Ngayon, a lot of reviewees, I myself, gusto ko yung nasasagutan ko, mabilis. For example, yung Anki. Diba? Kapag nag-Anki ka, gusto mo nasasagutan mo, mabilisan. Kasi alam na alam mo. Pero yung ganong klaseng high na na-experience pala natin, ay hindi siya ganon ka-effective when reviewing. Kasi when reviewing, dapat daw ang ide-desire natin ay yung mga mahihirap. Okay? Okay? So we need to desire, we need to want to learn more difficult concepts. Yung bang kapag nire-review natin, it feels harder at first. Kasi these concepts will lead to stronger learning later. Okay? Now, meron tayong idea of rote memorization, di ba? And I would say na you would agree with me na ayaw natin ang rote memorization, right? Kasi sa rote memorization, alam natin yung sagot for a particular question, pero hindi natin naiintindihan kung bakit yun yung tamang sagot, right? And pagdating sa exam, yung mga questions naman na pre-practice natin ay hindi yun yung exact na makikita natin sa exam. Kaya ayaw natin ng rote memorization, I myself, ayoko nun. Kasi paano kapag binaliktad yung mga tanong? Paano kapag iba yung context na ginamit? Ibig bang sabihin nun, hindi mo na siya masasagot? So, we really need to dive deeper into a particular concept. Okay? We need to know kung bakit yan yung tamang sagot and why the other options are wrong. Yan yung ibig sabihin ng desiring difficulties. Kasi in brain science, okay, napag-alaman na the brain remembers better when it is required to work. Okay? So kapag pinag-iisipan nyo talaga yung mga question, yung mga concept, kapag pakiramdam nyo na i-stress na kayo sa kaiisip, yun pala yung effective na learning. So sana magkaroon tayo ng paradigm shift. Okay? Kasi madalas, yung iba, kapag nahihirapan na, yun yung time na sila ay nagpapahinga na, or bukas na lang ulit, kasi mahirap na eh. Pero dapat pala, mag-push through tayo dun sa hirap na yon. Okay? Doon sa point na yon kung saan mahirap, dapat we should remain focused and push through it kasi doon mas lumalago yung ating learning. Okay? Now another one. Marami sa mga estudyante madali na i-read na lang yung notes, no? Basahin lang ng basahin yung notes, no? Kasi kapag nandyan yung notes, parang alam na alam mo kung ano yung binabasa mo, you become familiar. Pero again, yung familiarity is different from learning. Kapag familiarity lang yung habol mo, very easy lang yun. Okay? So kapag basa ka lang ng basa ng notes mo, hindi yun, it is not training your brain to apply concepts, to apply logical thinking or to apply analytical thinking into different contexts. Kasi basically, para ka lang nag-ruminate ng mga concept na yon. But if you try to recall it, you try to close your notes, recall it yourself, isusulat mo yung mga sagot, for example, or you try to explain it to others, okay? Without looking at your notes, the brain now is forced to retrieve that information. And when the brain is forced to retrieve the information, then learning becomes much more efficient. Okay? So, tandaan nyo yan, ha? Kaya kapag nahihirapan kayo, tandaan nyo lang yung sinabi ko, na, ito pala, nahihirapan ako, ibig sabihin, I am learning. Okay? So, nahihirapan ako na i-explain tong concept na to, ibig sabihin, I am learning. Nahihirapan ako sa topic na to, and sinusubukan kong i-understand, yes, ito yung point that you are learning. Okay? So, why this matters? Una, kasi marami sa mga reviewees natin, including myself, mga estudyante natin, ang gustong paraan ng pagre-review yung mga simple, yung mga nakaugalian ng pagre-review. Rereading, mag-highlight ka, magkakopy ka ng notes mo, manonood ka lang ng lectures ng paulit-ulit. Yan, madali yan. Hindi ko naman sinasabing mali, pero madali kasi. Okay? No, dahil madali yan, it does not lead to mastery. It leads to familiarity. And nagiging misleading po yun. Okay? Remember, yung topic natin yesterday, it's more about calibration. Paano makakalibrate na mahina ka sa isang particular subject kung hindi mo naman tinitest yung sarili mo? So you need to test yourself para magkaroon ng some sort of struggle yung brain natin, and from that struggle, you will learn more. Okay? Now, isipin nyo na lang kasi ako'y nag-gym, ano? So, sa pag-gym, para lumaki yung muscles natin, kailangan natin ng progressive overload na tinatawag. So, ano ba yung progressive overload? Dapat hindi pare-parehas na weights yung binubuhat natin. Dapat pabigat siya ng pabigat. And bakit pabigat ng pabigat? Kasi yung muscle natin, kapag pare-parehas lang yung weight na yon, it gets used to lifting that weight. So wala ka ng increased power na napuproduce doon. Pero kapag ni-level up mo, pinahirapan mo ulit yung muscle mo, doon yung situation kung saan magkakaroon ng hypertrophy, mag-grow lalo yung muscle. So ganun din siya sa pagre-review. You need some sort of progressive overload. Pahirapan mo yung sarili mo. Yung mga topics na madali na lang sa'yo, medyo isang tabi mo na. And then, ang pagfokusan natin ay yung mga mahihirap na concept. Isang tabi muna, ha? Kasi baka naman kalimutan nyo. Huwag nyo kakalimutan yun kasi kailangan nyo rin yung mga madadali na yun sa exam. Pero isang tabi muna kasi kailangan nyo mag-focus dun sa mga madadaling, dun sa mga mahihirap rin na concepts. So, how do you apply desiring difficulties in your review? Well, una, instead of rereading, instead of highlighting, practice test, practice test, practice test. Okay? So, kailangan yung mag-recall. Talaga, yan yung pinaka number one na effective strategy sa pagre-review nyo. Hindi yung babasahin nyo yung buong outline na provide ko or handout, papanoorin nyo ng paulit-ulit yung videos ko. Hindi po yun. Ang mahalaga doon is you need to answer questions. You need to test yourself. Ngayon ako, nagpo-provide ako sa inyo ng quizzes every day. And meron din kayong Anki. Pwede nyong gamitin yung mga tool na yon. Ngayon, sa mga gusto ng extra challenge, pwede nyo na rin gamitin si ChatGPT ngayon. Okay? So, ang gagawin nyo lang, kokopyahin nyo yung notes, for example, ilalagay nyo sa ChatGPT and uutusan nyo si ChatGPT na i-test kayo dun sa mga concepts na nandun. That's one way of learning, right? We use advanced technology to help us learn. So ako sa aking MBA, ganun yung ginagawa ko. No? Instead of rereading the material, ang gagawin ko, bibigay ko yung material kay ChatGPT and magkakaroon kami ng question and answer portion. So that's how I test my knowledge. Next, ito yung question kahapon. Dapat ba one topic lang or many topics? Now, ang sagot dyan, according to cognitive science, you need to mix topics. Okay? Why do you need to mix topics? Kasi ang brain natin, kapag pare-parehas yung topic dyan, nagkakaroon ng pattern. And it makes things easier. And ayaw nga natin ng easy sa pagre-review. Gusto natin gawing komplikado, gusto natin gawing mas mahirap. So you need to weave different subjects sa iyong pagre-review. Para hindi ka lang masanay na, kunwari, porke animal science major ka, ansay lang yung gusto mong review. Hindi ka matututo doon. Dapat ansay, ag-econ, di ba? Tapos day 2 would be crop protection, crop science. So you need to mix up the topics. So wag yung tipong i-cover natin isang buong month for crop science and then the next month for animal science. Medyo nagkakaroon ng yung brain kasi natin deceiving eh. Kapag nakadetect yan ng pattern, parang mas madali na lang sa kanya. Pero again, yung mas madali na yon, it's not learning but rather it is familiarity. So to apply this, mix related topics. Next, instead of cramming, yan, review after some time has passed. Okay? Kaya mahalaga na i-structure nyo yung review nyo kung saan nakakalimutan nyo intentionally yung mga concepts. Kunwari, ni-review nyo today is agricultural economics, bukas, ibahin nyo naman. Okay? To allow some time for your brain to forget and consolidate. So kapag kasi nagkaroon ng forgetting, mas mahirap i-retrieve yung information na yon. And again, kapag mas mahirap i-retrieve yung information na yon, we are learning more. And finally, maki-engage kayo sa akin during our Q&A, ano? Kasi sometimes ang ginagawa ko sa Q&A, aside from explaining the topics directly to you and then answering some questions, paminsan-minsan ang ginagawa ko, pinapasagot ko na agad before the topic. Mas effective rin kasi yung ganong klase ng estilo, ano? Tatanungin ko kayo on a particular subject that you don't know about, and then you will try to answer it before I give the concepts behind it. So these are the 4 ways that you can use yung desiring difficulties, no, na topics, make it stick na libro, and apply it to your review journey. Okay? So ayan. We've already spent almost 2 hours sa ating review. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. And before we end, baka may mga questions ulit regarding anything that I can help you with sa Google Classroom nyo, sa pagre-review, etc. So, dito, may question. Sir, how much time is allocated per subject during board exam? 3 hours. Okay? 3 hours per exam. Pero yung pinapatest ko sa inyo na hopefully pina-follow nyo, ha? Dapat 2 hours lang. Okay? Again, papasok tayo dun sa konsepto ng desiring difficulties. Kung 3 hours ang binigay, gawin nating 2 hours. Doon nga sa mga pinapa-review ko nun sa face-to-face during my previous years, 1 hour 30 minutes lang ang time na binibigay ko sa kanila. Okay? So gawin natin yon. Pahirapan natin yung sarili natin para ma-force yung brain natin to read faster, okay? para ma-force yung brain natin to retrieve more information faster, etc. Next po, next question. If there's any more questions, baka gutom na kayo, alas 8 na. Sir, bakit hirap mahalin ng ag-econ? Wow! Yan ang pinakamagandang subject sa lahat. Anyways, alam nyo, ang agricultural economics, para sa akin, yan yung pinakamadaling exam. Why? It's because it is more on analysis rather than memorization. I mean, kailangan mo pa rin i-memorize yung mga basic concepts. Kailangan mo pa rin i-memorize yung mga fundamentals. Pero kapag nakuha mo na yon, basically, kahit na paikot-ikutin nila yung question sa'yo, alam mo kung paano sagutan. Kasi ang technique sa agriculture, pag-review ng economics is to analyze mga different steps, mga different tuturo ka less and more of sorry na biglang nag-end na ako na ata yung aking internet. So yun, pagdating sa agricultural economics, very detailed, no? Very detailed. Do that para mas matrain kayong lahat to answer the question in situational basis. Kasi pagdating sa exam, usually mga situations lang rin yan. Okay? So, yun. Siguro ang reason kung bakit ang hirap mahalin ng ag-econ is kasi nung mga undergrad tayo, usually ang nagtuturo ng ag-econ is yung mga matatanda. Okay? Yung mga medyo nakakaantok na explanation, they don't have much passion of teaching anymore. Hindi naman sa nanlalahat, ano? May mga kwan naman. May mga teachers naman that are passionate. Pero ako personally, sa experience ko, ag-econ, tinuro sa amin ng mga matatanda and I have to find ways to learn ag-econ from YouTube University. Yan. So, let's see. Ansay ang mahirap mahalin. Sorry po. Yes, nawalan po ako ng signal kanina. Ag extension, yep, mahirap rin yan. Lahat naman ng exam natin, mahirap. Lalo na kapag hindi ka nag-review. Ang mahirap sa agricultural extension is napakaraming readings. So, mahaba-haba yan. Don't worry ma'am, kapag second taker ka, usually lahat ng mga second taker na kakilala ko pumapasa. Yeah. Kasi medyo may familiarity na sila sa exam. So, I guess advantage mo rin yun na familiar ka na kung paano tinitake yung exam, ano yung mga questions na nandun. So, it's just a matter of preparing better. Yan. So, kaya po yan, kaya yan. Sir, paano sagutin kung lahat ng sagot tama? Paano ba yan? Yung pinakatama. Ang rule ko dyan ganito, no? Pero nakakatawang rule. Ang rule ko dyan is, number one, syempre, elimination. Ano ba yung mga mali? So, sabi mo, lahat mukhang tama. So, you're now left with nothing on there. Yung next na ginagawa ko is, ano ba yung parang pinaka nagme-make sense na sagot. So, i-analyze mo. Ngayon, kapag lahat nagme-make sense na sagot, ang next na strategy ko dyan is, ano ba yung pinakamahaba? So, yan yung pinakamahaba. More than likely, baka yun yung sagot. And finally, kung lahat sila pare-parehas ng length, ang sagot ko na dyan is, it's either letter B or C. Ewan ko. But for some reason, it works. Yeah? It works kapag B or C. Siguro kasi tinatamad silang maglagay sa A, at saka pag ilalagay naman sila sa D, masyado nang matagal, so B or C. Pero again, hindi yun foolproof na strategy. Ganun lang yung ginawa ko noon. Kasi I need to prepare myself for a strategy. Paano kapag parang lahat tama or hindi ko talaga alam yung concept? Yung mga wild card na questions na tinatawag. Paano ko yun sasagutin? So yun yung naging strategy ko. But again, ang pinaka effective na strategy is alamin mo na. Okay? Ngayon na mismo. Okay? Mag-review ka na, mag-aral ka na. Yun yung pinaka the best na strategy sa lahat. Sir, paano naman po pag working? What do you mean, ma'am? Anong ibig sabihin ng working? Anong strategy pag working? Nabanggit ko to kahapon. Ang pinaka-strategy natin dyan is to always block time per day. So ako, ang ginagawa ko noon, 1 hour sa umaga, 1 hour sa gabi. Basically, ang ginagawa ko sa umaga, magbabasa lang ako. Tapos sa gabi naman, puro flashcards na yan. Puro Q&A na yung ginagawa ko. So yun, kailangan mo lang talagang bantayan yung oras mo on that part. Ibig sabihin, kapag dumating yung time na oras na para mag-review, magre-review ka lang talaga. No other distractions. Paano kapag nagkamali ka sa shading, like need mo burahin, magja-jump ba ang machine kapag binura mo yung answer? I'm not sure, no? Kasi hindi pa naman ako nakakita ng machine na nag-check. Pero yan, kinatatakutan yan ng marami, including me. Okay? Now, share ko lang, based on my experience, ang pinakamababang subject ko is Agricultural Economics and Marketing. Hindi dahil sa hindi ako nag-review, pero dahil nagkamali ako ng pagsagot. So, parang mga 10 items ata, yung na-misalign ko ba? Kumbaga, 10 na yung sinasagutan ko sa questionnaire ko, tapos sa answer sheet, nasa number 11 na ako. So, 10 items yung na ganun ko. Ako kasi mahilig na ako mag-shade agad. So, because of that, parang natakot na rin ako na magbura. Okay? So, siguro, in order to foolproof you in that mistake, markahan nyo na lang muna. Okay? Marka lang. Or encircle nyo lang dun sa questionnaire nyo before you shade. I think that's a good strategy na I have to learn it the hard way. Okay? Nagsulat ka ba ng reviewers mo noon? Yes, yes. Nagsulat ako ng reviewers ko noon. Primarily, lahat ng mga sinulat ko yung nasa Anki. Tapos, nagsusulat rin ako on some of my notes, ganon. Pero usually scribbles, no? Mga notes, mental note, hindi na mga long format notes, no? Kasi na-provide naman na sa amin yung handouts, na-provide na sa amin yung video. So, mga mental notes na lang. Tapos kapag may mga concept ako na hindi maintindihan, I try to explain it in writing, in diagram, in drawings. So, yun yung way ko ng pagre-review, ng pagsusulat. Several exam questions focus on specific crop, farm animals, and nagbabago every year. Yes, ma'am. Magpo-provide po ako niyan sa final coaching natin. Okay? So, doon ko ipapasok yung mga feedback from our previous reviewers on some concepts or topics na kailangan nating pag-focusan. So, don't worry on that. Tatakal natin yan, say, a week before the exam or 2 weeks before the exam. Okay? Any more? Okay. So, I think, pwede na tayong mag-end. So, going once, going twice, going thrice. Kung wala na pong question, maraming salamat ulit. And, kumpletuhin nyo yung comprehensive exam, please. So, next week, ang itatakal naman natin is crop protection and soil science. And again, some tips, no? And then, get ready for it. Kumpletuhin nyo yung sa comprehensive exam. Sagutan nyo lahat yung mga quizzes na pinoprovide ko. And also, tapusin nyo yung nasa Google Classroom. Ang kagandahan sa Google Classroom, ano ba, ladderized, structured na yon, no? Magsisimula kayo sa pinakauna hanggang sa pinakahuli. Okay? Plus, yung mga additional materials ko, siguradong makakatulong sa inyo yun sa inyong pagre-review. Okay? So, thank you so much again. Have a great night, everyone. Maraming salamat and pasensya na kung nag-extend tayo. Thank you, thank you.